This is a reading from the End Times as revealed to Maria Valtorta. 69. A vision of the final resurrection. As Maria Valtorta describes the following vision, she addresses her spiritual director, Father Migliorini, January 29, 1944. Complete text, Quaderni 44, pages 112 to 115. What I see this evening. A vast expanse of soil, so boundless as to be like a sea. I say soil because there is soil as on the fields and on the streets, but there are no trees, not a stalk, not a blade of grass. Dust, just dust. I see this in a light that is not light, a barely sketched, wan glimmer of a greenish violet as can be seen at times of very strong storms or total eclipses. A frightening light of burnt out stars. That's it. The sky is starless. There is no moon, no sun. The sky is empty, as the earth is empty. The one has been stripped of its flowers, of light, the other of its plant and animal life. Both are huge sloughs of what used to be. I have all the time to see this desolate vision of the universe's death. I think it will look the same as at the first moment, when sky and earth already existed, but the sky was void of heavenly bodies, and the earth was bare of life. It was an already solidified globe, but still uninhabited, hurtling in space, waiting for the Creator's finger to give it herbs and animals. Why do I understand the vision to be that of the universe's death? Because of one of those other voices. I do not know whom they come from, but they do in me what the chorus does in the ancient tragedies. They point out special aspects of the play that the protagonists do not explain. This is precisely what I would like to tell you, and which I will tell you after. As I look around on this desolate scene, the need of which I do not understand, I see springing up from I don't know where, standing in the middle of the endless plain, I see death, a skeleton, laughing with its uncovered teeth and its empty eye sockets, sovereign of that dead world, wrapped up in its winding sheet as in a cloak. It has no scythe, it has already reaped everything. It casts its empty gaze around on its harvest and sneers. It has its arms joined on its chest. Then it opens them, these skeletal arms, and opens its hand, nothing more than bare bones. And because it is a giant figure present everywhere, better to say near everything, it leans a finger, its right forefinger, onto my forehead. I feel the ice of that sharp bone that seems to pierce through my forehead and go into my head like an ice needle. But I understand that this has no other meaning than that of calling my attention to what is happening. Sure enough, with its left arm, it gestures at the desolate sweep on which we rise. It, the sovereign, I, the only living being, upon its silent bidding, given with its left hand's skeletal fingers, and by rhythmically turning its head right and left, the soil cracks into thousands of clefts, and in the bottom of these dark gullies, scattered white things shine white. But I do not understand what they are. As I strain to decide what they are, death goes on furrowing the clouds with its gaze and command, as with a plowshare. The clouds cleave open more and more as far as the faraway horizon, and death plows the waves of the sailless seas, and the waters gape open, forming liquid abysses. Then from the earth gullies and from the sea furrows, the white things which I saw scattered and unbound come up and reassemble. Millions upon millions upon millions of skeletons emerge from the oceans and stand up from the ground. Skeletons of all sizes, from tiny infant skeletons with tiny hands like little dusty spiders, to adult skeletons, even gigantic ones whose bulk evokes some antediluvian beings, and they are amazed, somewhat shaking, like people waking up with a start from a deep sleep, who cannot make out where they are. The sight of all these skeletal bodies shining white in this apocalyptic non-light is frightful. Then a cloudiness, not unlike fog, rises from the open ground and open seas and slowly condenses around these skeletons, taking shape and becoming opaque. It turns to flesh, bodies like ours, who now live, Eye sockets are filled with eyes and irises. Cheekbones are covered with cheeks. Over bare jaws, gums now stretch, and lips are remade, and hair grows again on the skulls, and the arms are fleshed out, and the fingers turn nimble, and the whole bodies become alive again, just like ours. Though, like ours, the new bodies look different, some are wonderfully beautiful, with a perfection in shape and colors which makes them like art masterpieces. Others are hideous, not on account of lameness or real deformities, but on account of their overall appearance, more beastly than human. Sidelong eyes, twisted faces, looks of a wild beast, and what strikes me the most, a darkness given off by those bodies which increases the leaden color of the air around them, whereas the wonderfully beautiful ones have smiling eyes, peaceful faces, pleasant looks, and shed a brightness that makes a halo round their whole being from head to toe and spreads to the inside. If all were like the murky ones, darkness would be so complete as to hide everything. But because of the other ones, brightness not only lasts, it increases so much that I can see everything as one should. The ugly ones' cursed destiny is not in doubt, because this curse is marked on their foreheads. They say nothing, casting around them frightened, sidelong glances with their faces lowered, and they gather to one side upon an inmost command which I cannot hear, but must have been given by someone and heard by the risen. The wonderfully beautiful ones also gather, smiling at one another and looking at the ugly ones with pity, mixed with horror. And these exceedingly beautiful ones sing, singing to God a slow, tender hymn of blessing. I can see nothing else. I understand. I just saw the final resurrection. Jesus' commentary on the previous vision. After showing Maria the vision of the final resurrection, Jesus commented on it for her, beginning with a thought which she expressed very near the start of the vision, January 29th, 1944, complete dictation. Quaderni 44, pages 115 to 117. Jesus says, "When time has come to an end, and life must needs be only life in the heavens, the whole universe, as you thought, will again be what it was in the beginning. Then, after I have judged it, shall be completely destroyed. Many think that from the moment of the end until the universal judgment, there will only be an instant. But God will be good to the very end. O my daughter, good and just. Not all the people living at the last hour will be holy, and not all will be damned. Among the holy ones there will be those who are destined to see heaven, but have something to pay for. I would be unjust if I quashed their expiation, which I inflicted on all those who came before them, and were in the same condition when they died. Therefore, those alive in the last hour, and who die at the last hour, and who deserve heaven, but need to be cleansed more, will go into the purifying fire. Meanwhile, justice and the end shall come for other planets, and one by one the stars shall die out in the sky, like flames on which someone blows, and darkness and cold shall increase throughout my hours, which are your centuries. And the hour of darkness has already begun in both sky and hearts. I will increase the heat of the purifying fire, so that the purification may be quicker, and the blessed do not wait too long to bring their holy flesh to glorification and delight it, too, in seeing its God, its Jesus in his perfection and his triumph. That is why you saw the earth bereft of herbs and trees, of animals, of people, of life, and the oceans without sail, a still expanse of still waters, because the waters, no longer called to give life to their fishes, will no longer need motion, just as the earth, no longer called to give life to the grasses and other beings, will no longer need warmth. This is why you saw the sky lacking its luminaries, without fires anymore, and without lights anymore. Light and warmth will no longer be necessary to the earth. By then a huge corpse, bearing within itself the corpses of all those who lived from Adam to the last son of Adam. Death, my last servant on earth, shall carry out its last task, and then it too shall cease to exist. There shall no longer be death, but only eternal life, in bliss or in terror. Life in God or life in Satan, for yourselves reassembled in soul and body. Enough for now. Rest and think of me. Maria Valtorta explains to her spiritual director, I forgot to tell you, Father, that all the bodies were naked, but it was not disgusting, as though malice were dead too, in them and in me. And then the bodies of the damned were shielded by their darkness, and the bodies of the blessed were clothed by their light. So what is animality in us disappeared under the emanation of the inner spirit, a very happy or very desperate master of the flesh. 71. A prophecy from Ezekiel, January 31st, 1944. Complete dictation. Quaderni 44, pages 118 to 121. Ezekiel chapters 10 and 11. Jesus says, the Tau sign is a T-shaped cross. It is fair that the cross which marks the subjects should be so, since they cannot have a canopy above their throne with the name of sovereigns. They are children of God, but not firstborn children of the Father. Only the firstborn Son sits on his kingly throne. Only Christ, whose earthly throne was the cross, bears high up on his cross, on the beam above the head, his glorious sign, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews. Christians bear the sign of Christ with the top humbly missing, as befits children of royal stock, but not firstborn of the Father. What is the Tau sign made up of? Where is it affixed? Oh, let go of material forms when you immerse yourselves into the knowledge of my kingdom, which is holy, of the Spirit. It is not a material sign which will make you immune from the verdict executed by the angels, in characters invisible to human eyes, but very visible to my ministering angels. It will be written on your spirits, and it is your own works, your very selves, which will have carved during the lifetime of each one of you that sign which makes you worthy to be saved for life. Age, social standing, all that will be nothing in my angels' eyes. The only thing of value will be that sign. It will equalize kings and beggars, women and men, priests and warriors. All will bear it equally, if in their respective lifestyles they have equally served God and obeyed his law. And the reward shall be the same, to see and enjoy God forever, for all those who appear before me with that shining sign in their spirits. Just being very convinced of the need, the duty to give God all glory and all obedience, carves into your souls that holy sign which makes you mine and instills into you a pleasant similarity to me, the Savior. And on account of this, like me, grieve for people's sins, since those sins both offend the Lord and deal spiritual death to your brothers and sisters. Charity is kindled, and where there is charity, there is salvation. Ezekiel says he heard the Lord commanding the man wearing linen to take the burning coals that were between the cherubim and to cast them onto the city to punish the guilty, starting with those of the sanctuary. For the eye of the Lord was tired of seeing the works of people who think they can do evil with impunity because God lets them do it, and who deceive themselves that God sees nothing but the hypocritical outward appearances. No, with his infinite power, God reads the bottom of your hearts. O you ministers of the sanctuary, O you mighty of the earth, O you married couples who sin, O you children who break the fourth commandment, O you professionals who lie, O you dealers who rob, O all of you who disobey my 10 commandments. Any covering is useless, like your X-rays, of which you are so proud, and far more yet. God's eye searches you, penetrates into you, pierces you, reads you, dissects you for what you really are. Remember that. Fire taken from between the cherubim to punish is not symbolic action. What do you lack when you are at fault? Charity. I already explained it to you, people, when I spoke of purgatory and hell. Though these 2 truths, which you consider fairy tales, charity towards God, the first 3 commandments, charity towards the neighbor, the other 7. Oh, how many times you will hear me coming back to this subject. It would be better if you did not need it so much. It would mean you are improving, but you are not improving. On the contrary, you are hurtling down quickly, like meteorites towards anti-charity. Your deeds, in fact your misdeeds against charity, are multiplying more and more, increasing like a mushroom bed sprung up on the decay of a piece of land. I see this farther and farther reaching, thicker and thicker growth, this thriving of misdeeds upon pre-existent misdeeds, as though from a layer of rot another, more poisonous layer sprang up, and so on. The atmosphere of sin and crime, the soil of sin and crime, the layer of sin and crime in which you live, on which you settle, from which you spring up, that's what feeds with its corruption the new layer, soil and atmosphere yet more corrupt and bloodthirsty. It is a perpetual motion, a revolving chaos of evil, like that of certain pathogenic microbes which go on reproducing non-stop and with greater and greater virulence in infected blood. Now, it is fair that you should be punished for your sins against charity by the fire of the charity which you have rejected. It was love. Now it is punishment. God's gift is not to be scorned, but you have scorned it. The gift turns into chastisement. God withdraws charity from you and leaves you in your anti-charity. God hurls at you like thunderbolts the charity which you looked down upon, and he punishes you, in order to call you again, if not many of you, still those who can have a change of heart and meditate. The cherubim, the symbol of supernatural charity, keep between them the embers of charity. The action which seems only symbolic conceals a real truth. When you are summoned to the great judgment, those who lived in charity will not appear burnt by the punitive fire. Already ablaze with themselves, due to the holy love which filled them, they will not have been bitten by the burning divine punishment. They will have received the divine kiss, which will make them more beautiful, whereas those who are flesh, only flesh, will bear on their flesh the scars of the divine flashes of lightning, because only the flesh can be marked by such scars, not the spirit, which is a fire living in the fire of the Lord. At this judgment, on the sides of the judge that I am, there will be my 4 evangelists. They wore themselves out to bring the law of charity into hearts, and after they died, they continued their work with their gospels, from which the world has life, because to know Christ is to have life within oneself. It is therefore fair that John, Luke, Matthew, and Mark be with me when you are judged for not having lived the gospel. I am not a jealous and stingy God. I call you to share my glory. Shouldn't I then give these faithful servants of mine, who made my word known to you and undersigned it with their blood and their troubles, give them a share in the glory of judgment? I will judge you not while you are alive, but at the confines of earthly life, namely, where life comes to an end, to become eternity. I will judge you for the life each one of you has lived. I will judge all of you, from first to last, once and for all, for the good you have done or have failed to do, as you saw, Maria. At the resurrection you will all be equal, poor, unfastened bones, poor haze thickening into flesh, things you are so proud of now, as if those bones and that flesh were so great as to be greater than God. As matter, you are nothing, nothing. Only my spirit infused into you turns you into something, and only by keeping it in you, my spirit, which became a soul in you, do you deserve to be clothed with that imperishable light, which will be a garment for your flesh, by then made incorruptible for eternity. I will judge you, and already among yourselves you will judge one another, and within yourselves you will judge yourselves, even before I appear, because then you will see yourselves. The earth for which you are so grasping will be dead, and with it all the flavors of earth, and you will come out of the drunkenness you fill yourselves up with, and you shall see. Oh, dreadful sight for those who lived only for earth and its falsehoods. Oh, joyful sight for those who beyond earth's voice wanted to listen to heaven's voices and remained faithful to them. The first shall be dead, the second alive. They shall be darkness or light, depending on their lifestyles, which are either with the law or against the law. For having replaced it with the human or demoniac law, they shall go either into the dreadful embrace of never-ending darkness or into the beatific one of the triune light, which glows, waiting to fuse you to itself. O my saints, O those who love me, for all eternity. One more. 72. Spiritual Salt Flats versus the Waters of Life, February 6, 1944. Complete dictation. Quaderni 44, pages 193 to 196. Ezekiel chapter 47. Jesus says, I have said, I am, in whoever welcomes me, a fountain of living water, springing up into everlasting life. Whether it is an individual or a nation, blessed are those who welcome me and have within themselves the marvels of the water of true life. But by now there are too few individuals who welcome me, and even fewer nations, and the fruits of rejecting Jesus Christ, or even only overlooking him, can be seen. They can be seen in their whole tragic aspect, and tasted with their poisonous tang, which lead you people to despair, to death, after having made you rave with the anxiety for the future, which makes you almost go insane. And you have every reason to go insane. If you could only see the whole truth about the approaching future, not one of you without Satan's support could bear up. I say Satan's, because supporting yourselves with Christ is something you do not think about. In fact, the more you need compassionate support, a light in the dark, a word that comforts and guides you, the more you turn away your eyes, hostile to those things, accusing God and bearing him the grudge you should bear against your wicked passions and against the ones who causes you so much evil, Satan. Look at what you have already turned into and shudder. Shudder as you think of what you will become, worse than barren salt flats in which every life form is absolutely impossible. They are found in the most desolate spots in the deserts, and their desolation does not know even the miserable covering stretched out on the desert's desolation, a covering of wretched grasses, thorny shrubs, thinly scattered animals dwelling there, which gives that solitude a life of flights, chirps, and slithers, and shows that that strip of ground is not dust, dead for centuries. You will become worse than those saline regions, where nothing can live, and no seed can strike root, and no bird can interrupt its flight, and no reptile can stop on the ground or even brush with a swift movement its glossy skin on it. This is what you will become, what you are becoming, what you have already become to a great extent, for having rejected Christ, the water that makes fertile. From my heaven, I, head of the mystical body composed of all the Christians, I pour out my waters of life, and from my church I spread them on the world. I would spread them, but the world erects dikes and dams and blockades my pouring. Really, the world thrusts these dikes against the church to choke her and bury her, and me with her. It is a truceless fight. It is the real war, which all the wars of all mankind in the Christian era come from, the fight against Christ. Take note. One need not launch great persecutions or cause great schisms to fight against Christ. The small-scale, individual, innermost struggle of each one of you against my law, that too is a fight against Christ. The hidden, crafty state struggle of a country against the voice of Catholic Rome, against the voice speaking in my name through my vicar's mouth and drawing people, especially leaders, to the law of honesty, duty, and love. That too is a fight against Christ. Those individual and state struggles are guerrilla warfare. Nowadays you are so familiar with military expressions that you understand me if I call them like this. They are guerrilla warfare. Then there come out of these the real attacks, decisive advances, impressive maneuvers, and cruel slaughters. Satan is the captain of those armed forces which began in Jerusalem with the Sanhedrin, among the caste of the Pharisees, scribes, and Sadducees, armed forces which found their ensign in Judas, armed forces which became larger and larger over the centuries of persecutions against Christians. Like avalanches, they have overburdened themselves with newer and newer elements, with the schisms, demagogic doctrines, political parties, and new forms of government, and they will climax with the Antichrist, who shall set against my stream of grace a stream of savagery and blood. In it you shall wallow and fall, and very few shall fall as holy victims, calling upon Christ. Most shall fall like slaughtered beasts, gutted with vices and grown fat on vices, disturbed, poisoned, satanized by cursed doctrines, demons in their blaspheming way of speaking, in their rejecting minds, in their abjuring hearts. O water of divine grace, going by, you would have brought life, would have purified and fed the sands, and would have taken away salinity and decayed matter from the waters in which you would have blended. Thus, you would have enabled the sands to cradle strong trees loaded with fruits of every kind, and the waters to be home to fishes of every species. O flowery language of my prophet, the water that purifies is that water flowing out of my heart, opened for love of mankind. It brings along the essence of that divine love at whose contact every impurity falls, as it would fall, due to a blessed filter. Your humanity filtered through mine. Could there be a greater marvel of love than this? God making himself a man to save, through himself, all of mankind? The sands are the souls, as many as the grains of sand, which by contact and union with me are made fertile, good, fit to produce a tree of life. And the plants are the souls again, which, on account of living in ground irrigated by grace, prosper until they reach heaven and yield fruit of every kind. In other words, all the virtues. The waters that were bitter, and which grace cures so that many fishes can thrive in them, are the good works. Understand the language of my prophet. It is so clear when looked at with eyes purified by love of God. No longer desire to be decayed swamps and low-lying shores where the bitterness of salt stagnates, namely where evil stagnates, and where decay holds sway, namely where the greatest evil holds sway. For if the evil of little charity, of lukewarmness, of carelessness is salt forbidding life to good works, the decay of great evil, namely of the 7 vices, of anti-Christianity, forbids even the swift passing by of a good thought. Do not sink down to such decay. Strive to climb up again from your baseness. Climb up towards God's fountain. Blend with it. See to it that by coming nearer and nearer to me, it will submerge you, rule you, quash your poor egos under its great redemptive power, and make you holy, make you blessed, make you happy, even in this life, my children. This life contains so much grief already that to weep, no one needs to add on the grief of being against Christ, which causes so many individual and collective ruins. Listen to the voice calling you. Listen to the voice of the one who loves you. There is none whatsoever who loves you as your God does, and there is none who tells you words truer than mine. Open up to receive them. Open up to grace. It comes to heal your sicknesses, comes to wipe off your tears. It comes and waits at the threshold for you to say, come in, to rush into you with all its graces of peace, of calm, of salvation, of eternal life in the end, since in it there is the combination of every joy.